Okay guys, this is part 2 of today's math lesson. This is for page 81, and hopefully this page will go a little bit quicker, but we are still going to be using what we've been learning about fractions to solve these problems. So make sure you're on page 81 and then follow along with me. Remember, you can pause the video at any time if I'm going too fast, okay? All right, if you followed along in the last video, you should be ready for problem number 4 on page 81 in your math journal. We've got a story problem with fractions. Rachel and Dan are growing plants in science class. Rachel reports that her plant is 1 1/4 inches tall. That's a nice, friendly fraction. Dan says that his plant is 5/2 inches tall. So Dan reported his information in an improper fraction. We're trying to figure out whose plant is taller and how do we know? Well, because Rachel's is not an improper fraction, I can leave hers alone. I don't have to do anything with hers. Dan reported his with the numerator being larger than the denominator. We call that an improper fraction, and we want to always try to reduce those. So remember, it's just division. 5 divided by 2. So we can come over here and work out 5 divided by 2. You're asking yourself, how many 2's are in 5? So 2 times what gets me close to 5? That would be 2. 2 times 2 is 4. You subtract. 5 take away 4 is 1. And remember from what we talked about last week, when you're working with fractions and you get a remainder, you don't write remainder 1. You use that remainder and you turn it into a fraction. So this is your numerator. This is your denominator, because remember, 2 was the denominator. So it's 2 1/2. So now we can say that Dan's plant is really 2 1/2 inches tall, and Rachel's plant is 1 1/4. So whose plant is taller? Well, we know that 2 is bigger than 1, so Dan's plant is taller. So whose plant is taller? Dan's. How do you know? Well, we're going to write what we just did. We took 5/2 and we reduced it. It's the same thing as 2 1/2. So, how do you know? 5/2, and again, you can pause this once I get done so you have time to write it. 5/2 is the same as 2 1/2. Period. 2 1/2 is greater than 1 1/4. Okay, and you can pause here if you need to. For problems 5 through 10, we're going to be renaming each fraction as a mixed number, or each mixed number as a fraction greater than 1. All that really means is that if it's an improper fraction, we're going to reduce it. And if it's not improper, like this, if it's a mixed number, we're going to make it an improper fraction. And I'll show you a strategy for doing that too. Okay, so remember, it's just top divided by bottom for improper fractions. So 5/3 is the same thing as 5 divided by 3. So 5 divided by 3. How many times does 3 go into 5? 1 time. That's 3. 5 take away 3 is 2. And we don't write remainder 2. It's not 1 remainder 2. We turn it into a fraction. Your denominator was your 3, so that stays your denominator. It's 1 2/3. So 5/3 is the same as 1 2/3. That's called renaming a fraction. Here is one name. Here is another name. These are equal. All I did was reduce it, but they're still the same thing. Okay? It's just another way to write it. Let's look at this one. This one is not an improper fraction. It's 1 7/9. But we can turn it into an improper fraction by using a strategy that I call the MAD strategy, M-A-D. And what that stands for is multiply, add, denominator. So you multiply, you add, you keep the denominator. And I'll show you what that means. You multiply your denominator times your whole number. So you put a little multiplication symbol here. Then whatever you get, you're going to add your numerator to it. And then you leave the denominator alone. So let me show you. Multiply 9 times 1, which is 9. That's the m. Then you add 9 plus 7. That's 16. And then you keep the denominator. So I had 16. I keep the denominator, which was 9. 16 ninths. So multiply, add, denominator. Okay? So we've got a little bit more practice to do. This is improper. 11 is bigger than 8, so we're dividing. 11 divided by 8. Pause if you need to, work it out. 8 goes into 11 one time. That's 8. 11 take away 8. That's 3. So you have your 1. Remember, this is the denominator, so it's 3/8. 11/8 is equal to, it's the same thing as 1 and 3/8. It's just another way to write it. It's another name. Okay, but they are absolutely equal. They're the same thing. Here we're going to use the MAD strategy. So we're going to multiply 6 times 1, then we'll add 5. So 6 times 1 is 6. 6 plus 5 is 11. And then we keep the denominator. Multiply, add, keep the denominator. Okay? Back to number 9. 16 is bigger than 5, so we divide. 16 divided by 5. You're asking yourself, how many times will 5 go into 16? 5, 10, 15. It'll go 3 times. That's 15. Subtract, you get 1. Remember, this was your denominator, so it stays the denominator. 3 and 1/5. All right, and one more problem to use the MAD strategy for. So again, you're multiplying these two. So 2 times 3 is 6. Then you're going to add 1, so 6 plus 1, which is 7. And you keep the denominator. So it's 7/3. That's called the MAD strategy. And I'll have an anchor chart for you to put into your math journal later this week. That'll explain that, and you can use it to help you. Okay, one more problem left. Rename 34/8 as a mixed number. So that's what we were just doing up here for 5, 7, and 9. So we can think of 34/8 as a division problem. 34 divided by 8. And when I do that, I'll get a mixed number. These were mixed numbers. When it has a whole number and a fraction, it's called mixed. So that'll give us a mixed number. So we just come over here and we work it out. 34 divided by 8. So how many times will 8 go into 32 as equally as I can? I know that 8 times 4 is 32. So I can subtract. That leaves me with 2 left over. My denominator was 8, so this is my denominator. This is my whole number. So I have a big 4, that's my whole number. Numerator, denominator. 34/8 and 4 and 2/8 are equal. They're the exact same thing. This is one way to write it. This is another way to write it. And then it says explain your reasoning. How do you know that this is the same as this? Well, 34/8 is the same as as 34 divided by 8, because that's what we did. 34/8 is the same as 34 divided by 8. That's the problem that we did, which is, and I'll move this up for you, 4 remainder 2, and I can write it like this for now, or 4 2/8. And you can pause there so that you can copy that down. 34/8 is the same as 34 divided by 8, so that's what we did, which is 4 remainder 2, or we could rewrite it as 4 2/8. Okay, once you're finished filling out this page in your math journal, you can start on your math checklist.